let's,
Question, at some point, could you go over what kind of like breeds we can use or?
okay, we'll leave that for next, let's just, but is there is the book that, Robert Blumenkrantz, I understand that, there is one in the dormitory or in school. You have that book that has all of the different, cosmetics, perfumes, all different things that are chametz free. Have you been aware of that book? Is it available? You don't, okay, so we'll make sure that you have it.
Yeah, but
I understand there should be one in the dormitory, is it so?
even if this one, it is good to know how to, because we can live in different countries and there is no such book. Like.
Okay, well, if there is the ingredients that to look at, that is chametz ingredients, we'll try to make that available. Okay. There's the laws of Yom Tov. When it comes out on a weekday, so the Torah tells us that whatever is eaten, needed for eating is permissible to be done. So there are many halachas that on Shabbos we cannot do, but when it comes to preparing foods, that is permissible. So let us look at some of the things that could be done. Now we have on page 64. You have the the malacha borer. Borer is making a selection from a mixture, and there are the rules as it applies to Shabbos and as it applies to Yom Tov. So we have at the bottom of the page, we have on Shabbos, to select an item from a mixture on Shabbos, then there are three conditions. Number one, it has to be what you want and leave what you don't want behind. Number two, it cannot be done from a special tool. Number three, it has to be done when you're ready to use it. That's the Shabbos rule. However, on Yom Tov, on page 65, so on Yom Tov, it is permissible, and you're not limited to do it when you actually are going to use it. So you could do borer for that day, whatever you need for that day itself. So it doesn't have to be done immediately before the meal. It can be done at any time of that day that you're going to be using it that day. What you have to do is take the item that's easier to remove. In other words, you have a bunch of grapes, and you have a few spoiled grapes on them. So on Shabbos, take what you want and leave what you don't want behind. On Yom Tov, what would we do? You're allowed to do selection. So what would we do on Yom Tov versus Shabbos?
Throw away the not good grapes. Throw away the bad grapes.
Take away the bad grapes, because that's the easier thing to do. If it's something that it takes longer to take away the bad, then you take away the good. But whenever it takes a shorter time, less effort, that is what you do on Yom Tov. So that would be permissible. Sorting that is normally done at a large scale, like sifting flour, that is prohibited on Yom Tov, because again, we can only do on Yom Tov that which is needed for that day. If something is usually done in a large quantity, it means it's being done for more than that day. So that we cannot do. So therefore, sifting cannot be done on Yom Tov, because usually when you sift, it would be a large amount of flour that we do. And also when you have the different tools, when it comes to grinding, So that too, that which is done at a large quantity, more than for what one day, one would not grind that. You could cut it up with a knife, but not with a grinder, not with a grater. So let's see some of the examples that is given. Let's look on the next page. Peeling food. Is permissible to use a specialized fruit or vegetable peeler on Yom Tov. You're allowed to use an apple corer. These implements are made for small quantities. That is permissible on Shabbos. We do not do this. The corer is made to take away the core of an apple core is take away the seeds. That cannot be done. You cannot use a specialized tool for those that are. So with our peeler, we had two opinions about that on Shabbos. For those peels that could be eaten, there are those who are lenient about that, could be done on Shabbos as well. Perforated spoon, or the spoon with the holes that we use, let's say when it comes to coleslaw, they would use a special perforated spoon, and its purpose is you take the cabbage and leave the liquid behind. On Shabbos, we don't do it because it is a special tool for separation. On Yom Tov, since it's done in a small quantity, you could use a perforated spoon for your salads. That would be permissible. You could also use a perforated spoon to take out noodles from liquid. That would be permissible. A sieve. A sieve cannot be used on Yom Tov because it's normally used for large-scale sorting. So a sieve is out.
What's that?
A sieve is a big basket that has a lot of holes in it, and you put if you have the noodles or rice that is cooked and you want them to be dry, you put them through a sieve.
Like a strainer, like
A strainer.
pasta?
It's a strainer. Okay. So strainer that's used for larger quantities cannot be done. For small quantities, it could be done. So therefore, there would be an example on the next page, page 67. An example would be a tea bag. A tea bag is a strainer. It has the tea leaves inside. You put it in the water, take it out because you want to keep the leaves intact. You don't want it together with the water. On Shabbos, we don't take it out. How would we use tea bags on Shabbos? Leave them inside with a spoon where you're not draining the liquid. You take a spoon and take the liquid with a spoon, with a tea bag, the liquid would still be in the tea bag together with the liquid that's in the spoon. Or you leave the tea bag in the cup. And if you don't want the tea bag there, you would pour the tea into another vessel, leaving the tea bag with some liquid still in the original cup. That would be for Shabbos. Yes.
Let me ask, I know some, for example, like in the community that I know, they're allowed to pick up, take out the feedback. So my question,
I would have to
is
look.
for everyone, it's supposed to be for everyone, right?
Yes, I would have to look to see where they, what they base it. Is it everyone's watching someone else? Or was it based on halacha? Sometimes you have certain things that people do because they do. And they didn't ask any questions about it. And everyone sees that's the way it's done, so that's the way they do it. But to see if there's any halachic basis for it, I would have to see if the Sephardic have their source. They have their halachic poskim, they have their halachic codifier, their halachic authorities, and they would bring their sources why they say it's permissible. So I would have to see if there's anything on that in the Sephardic community. So basically, we have the Sephardic community follows the Beis Yosef, the Rabbi Yosef Kailo, which is Shulchan Aruch. And if there are differences between the Ashkenazic and the Sephardic communities, there is the Moshe Isserlish, which is called the Ramah. They're both in the Shulchan Aruch, where the Beis Yosef is in bold letters, and the Ramah, the Moshe Isserlish, is in italic. You know that there's any, if they both agree on that, you only see both letters. If there's any comments, then you see also italic. So this would be, also the Sephardic communities bases their halakhic very, very strongly on the Rambam, Yitzchak Halfotzi, the Rif. The Yosef Cairo, he chose three halakhic authorities that were accepted in his time. Two were Sephardic, one was Ashkenaz. If all of them agreed, then there was one halakha. If there was a disagreement between the Ashkenaz and the Sephardic, then he went according to the majority. The Yosef Moshe ben Maimon, the Rambam, Maimonides, and the Rif of Yitzchak Alfasi, they were both from the Sephardic. So they were the majority. How did they both? How did they get the Sephardic and the Ashkenazi community? So the Sephardic community went with Babylon, went with Iraq. That was where the schools were, and then the Ashkenazi they went with Eretz Yisrael. It was a time where Eretz Yisrael was under the Romans, the Babylon was under the Persians. There was no communication between the two, so they each developed their stringencies and leniencies according to their community. And since there was no communication between the two, they cannot come. All the halachic authorities cannot come to one conclusion. So therefore, you have Eretz Yisrael. They went to Europe. They went to Rome, to Italy, and to Germany, France, Spain. They went that road. Then those from Iraq, they went to North Africa, Tunisia, Morocco. That's where they went. And then later it was Spain, when Spain was taken over by the what were they called? I guess the Muslims, they called them Muslims, Turk Muslims. So then that tradition went there. So they always had these two.
So back to the Sieve, I just saw that under calendar, you can use a calendar.
Calendar, so Sieve is a calendar, two separate things. They say calendars are small things. Okay. So a Sieve is for large scale, that would be more for flour, and a calendar is for little things taken out of the pot, which is only for the pot. The calendar, I did not mention a calendar.
No.
The Sieve, but a
I
calendar.
assumed it
So,
meant
so
calendar.
yes, so the calendar is something that is used only for a small
Like
amount,
pasta.
that is used pasta. So that would be fine because it's only done for a small scale. So the tea bag could be used on Yom Tov, squeezing lemons. So you could squeeze the lemons in such a way. On Shabbos you could not. On Shabbos you could squeeze it on a salad without preventing the seeds from being eliminated. That's on Shabbos. And on Yom Tov, you could, gives you the example, you could wrap a slice of lemon in a cheesecloth before squeezing out the juice. Not on Shabbos, but that could be done. The melon seeds, you could take out the seeds. Watermelon, if you have seeds, you could take them out before eating it. Bones, you could take out the bones. All these things could be taken out before. Page 68. You could wash dirt from fruits and vegetables, even for later use. But you cannot put it into water, that the water should separate the dirt, because this is considered a weekday activity. So washing the lettuce, as long as it's being used on that day, you're not limited when you're going to do so. We said on Shabbos, you could only wash the vegetables right before you're going to be eating that meal. But on Yom Tov, you're not restricted with that. You could do it at night for the next day, as long as it's for that day itself. So that could be done, but we do not soak the vegetables that are dirty on Yom Tov. So that cannot be done, that still remains. Removing something that's removing dirt from a liquid. Since it's something that is easy to be done, you can just take a spoon and remove it. So that's suggested even on Yom Tov itself, because it's something that is very easy to be done. Others say that you're not restricted. Another thing you can do is also cut away the fats, take away the bones. All these things could be done on Yom Tov. So again, this type of selection could be done. Sorting cutlery. And so there's a difference when it was mixed together. If it was mixed together before Yom Tov, then it should have been separated before Yom Tov. If it was mixed together on Yom Tov, then you could separate it. So again, whatever you could do before Yom Tov and it not improve by doing it on Yom Tov, it should have been done before Yom Tov. So therefore, if the cutlery was mixed before Yom Tov, then the same rules as applies to Shabbos applies to Yom Tov. If it was mixed already on Yom Tov itself, so then you may do so.
Are you allowed, if it's Shabbos, you allowed to store it if you're gonna use it later that day?
Not later.
Oh,
Take
right
what you
then.
want when you're ready to use. Okay. Let's look at Lisha 83. We have Lisha was kneading, taking a powder with a liquid, mixing it together and making it into a mass. That is Lisha, that is kneading. So on Shabbos, that cannot be done. If you're making a loose mixture, we had the two ways of doing it, two differences, the order of the ingredients and how it's stirred. That is for Shabbos when you're making a loose mixture. Then there are certain things on Shabbos we could not make. We could not make the instant potatoes, the jello, puddings. That could not be done on Shabbos. However, on Yom Tov, you could bake, you could make a cake, you could make challah. Instant potatoes could be done. Next page 84. Baby cereal, eggs and tuna salad. You could combine it with the mayonnaise, oil, and make the particles as small as you want because that is permissible. Cooking, page 85. Now, fresh food tastes better it tastes better when you're making it for that day. So therefore, since the Torah says what is needed for eating is permissible, so even now that we have freezers and refrigerators, we're not limited to make everything before Yom Tov unless for your convenience, because it'll save you time. You'll be able to spend the rest of the Yom Tov doing other activities. However, cooking is permissible from an existing fire if the food that you are cooking now tastes better when it's fresh. The days of Yom Tov, each one is a separate unit. How did we get in Eretz Yisrael? It is one day Yom Tov. First day on Pesach, the first day and the seventh day is Yom Tov, and the days in between are the intermediary days, Chol HaMoed. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, it's 2 days. Well, how did the difference come about? Anyone? Difference between Eretz Yisrael and outside of Eretz Yisrael? Anyone? Why the difference?
Also the calendar, the calculation.
Okay, so now the lunar, we go with the lunar month, with the lunar calendar. The month is 29 and a half days. So you always have a half a day either way. So some months are 30 days, some months are 29 days. How is this determined? This was determined by the Sanhedrin. That you had to have someone who, whenever they sighted the moon, they would come to Yerushalayim, to the Sanhedrin, and testified that they saw already the moon for that month. Then the Sanhedrin would question them, and if they found it to be accurate, then they would declare that today is Rosh Chodesh. So that is when it becomes the first day of the month. Who knew about this? People in Yerushalayim. Now, how does everyone else find out about this? So they have to have a way of transmitting this information, especially outside of Eretz Yisrael. How do they know? So originally they had through smoke signals. They had designated mountains, designated people who, the first one was the closest to Yerushalayim, and they would light a torch, and it was relayed. So once it was lit on this mountain, they would then next mountain also lit it until all of Eretz Yisrael knew, and also is able to go outside of Eretz Yisrael as well. So wherever there was a Jewish community, they had this information. So they all celebrated that month, having whenever the day was designated. Then there were those who deliberately wanted to undermine the Jewish way of life. And what they did was they lit the torch when it was not Rosh Chodesh, knowing deliberately they wanted to mislead. So therefore, that no longer was able to be done. So the next one was the Pony Express. They had messengers going from place to place, starting from if it wasn't on a Shabbos, as soon as it was declared as Rosh Chodesh, immediately there was designated messengers that would go to all the communities where they're able to reach. Now, they could only go to those places that they could come there before Yom Tov. Yom Tov is the 14th of Nissan is when it's Pesach. That's when it starts at night. Same thing is also for Sukkos, also at night. So therefore, since you went according where you were able to reach on Tishrei, because on Tishrei you were limited on days that you could travel. You could not travel on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah was out. Also, Yom Kippur was out. So you had less days where you were able to go. So therefore, all places where they're able to come before the holiday, they celebrated one day. They only went to places where there were Jewish communities. Everyone else did not know if it was if the previous month was 29 days or it was 30 days. So because of that, the 29th was celebrated as Yom Tov, number one, and the 30th as well. According to Kabbalah, there's also a spiritual difference between the two, being that in Eretz Yisrael, since it itself is a holy land, therefore those who live there are able to absorb the godly energy that comes for Yom Tov. Every Yom Tov, there is a godly energy that is unique for that holiday. Pesach, a time of Emunah, a time of faith, a time of liberation, self-liberation, be able to go out of their restraints. That is the specialty of Pesach. So in Eretz Yisrael, you're able to absorb this godliness in one day. You have one Seder, you eat the matzah, one day that keeps you going, both matzah of faith and matzah of healing. When it comes to outside of Eretz Yisrael, we're on a lesser spiritual level because of where we live. Therefore, it has to be given in doses. So one dose is too strong, it's given in 2 doses. So therefore, spiritually, there's a difference in Eretz Yisrael. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, that those who celebrate 2 days is because that's what is needed. However, biblically, how many days is there of Yom Tov? 1. So therefore, we treat halachically each day as a separate unit. So therefore, whatever you could not do on Yom Tov to prepare for the weekday, you cannot do on the first day to prepare for the second day. So all malachas that are done on the first day is something that is going to be used on the first day. So if you're doing selecting, you can only select what's needed for the first day. If you're doing cooking, you can only cook what is needed for the first day. However, if on the first day you are cooking something that is enhanced by adding more ingredients, so then you are benefiting on the first day itself. And therefore, that is permissible. As long as there are conditions, the conditions are, let's look on page 91, three conditions. Number one, all the food is placed in the pot in advance, so that when the pot is placed on the fire, only one act of cooking will occur. So, for instance, you're making the soup. You're making the chicken soup. If you put more chicken in, the soup will be a richer chicken, tastier. You're putting in vegetables. The more vegetables you add to the soup, the tastier the soup will be. So therefore, now you want to make a soup, but you also want to make a large soup that's going to be not only for the first day, you also want to have the soup of the second Seder. You don't want to start cooking again for the second Seder at night when it's not going to be ready until. So, are you allowed to do this? The answer is yes. What is the condition? All the ingredients that you're going to be putting for the soup will be put in before you put it on the fire. What will that mean? You can put in as many portions of chicken that you want, as many portions of vegetables that you want, since it's going to enhance the soup that you're eating on the first day. So you're basically doing for the first day with additional that's making it more tasty. And therefore, you're putting it all in one time. Number two, no extra effort may be done to prepare the unneeded item for cooking. So without any extra effort. Same thing is also you're going to be cooking water. So you can cook as much water as you want on the first day, even though you will not be using all that water on the first day, but it's the effort to cook the water is all the same, whether you cook a small amount or a large amount. So that can be done. And not to mention that you're doing this for the next day. So it's permitted to add unneeded food in a pot of cooking in order to enhance the flavor of the needed food or to prevent it from burning. This is permitted even if extra effort is involved. So let's look at the examples. Page 92. Cooking extra chicken. That is permissible. Only part will be used on the first day, the rest will be used for the next day. So breading it is not permissible because each breaded portion does not enhance the others. The others are going to be frying it or baking it. So putting more ingredients into the frying pan is not going to enhance the breaded that you're having. Or the same thing, you're making cutlets or you're making burgers, whether it's in the oven or you're making it on the frying pan. So then you would only do what you estimate is needed for that day. If you are anticipating guests, you could make for the guest as well. And also when you're making, you don't have to count each portion. What happens if someone wants to eat 2 portions? Or you're making burgers. So then you can make an estimate of how much you think will be eaten. And if there's any leftovers, that is permissible. So you're allowed to make as much as you anticipate will be used, and that is fine. Making a larger kugel than necessary. Adding more potatoes is not going to make the kugel any tastier. So you could only make as much as is needed for the kugel of that day. Blintzes, latkes, each one is separate, doesn't enhance the others. That cannot be done. Okay, let's see. That's pretty much so that's pretty much the differences between Shabbos and Yom Tov. Are we familiar with this? Okay, so now we have so how could we cook on Friday for Shabbos? That would be the Erev Tafshilin, right? On Wednesday, we're starting the cooking for Shabbos. So that would be an Erev Tavshilin this year, so it's Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. You could only prepare for Shabbos on Friday, you cannot prepare for Shabbos on Thursday, even though with the Erev Tavshilin. And you must make sure that the Erev Tavshilin, whatever you put away in the matzah and the cooked food should be fresh. It should be, as long as you're preparing, it should be edible. If it spoils, you had some meat, some fish, you left it out of the refrigerator on Wednesday. When it comes to Friday, it's spoiled. You don't have an Erev Tavshilin. Make sure that you have the Erev Tavshilin. It has to be intact while you're preparing on Friday. The Erev Tavshilin food that you put aside for the Erev Tavshilin has to be edible. So you put about on Wednesday, you put aside some fish. Make sure it's refrigerated, and also label it that no one eats it up. If someone ate it on Thursday or Friday, while you still didn't finish your cooking, then you don't have an Erev Tavshilin.
Do you ever eat it?
Yes, you have it for Shabbos. You have it you eat it on Shabbos.
I'm supposed to eat it.
It's a mitzvah. We're done with it.
But you have to.
You don't have to. It's recommended that since a mitzvah is done with this item, try to do another mitzvah. Okay, whose pen is this? Okay. Did anyone